Welcome back to Today in Atlanta Sports. It is February 23rd. We had a really exciting episode and a bunch of news regarding Freddie Freeman yesterday. We're going to talk some Hawks today, some potential trade stuff in the offseason since it's still the All-Star break. But first, I want to start off kind of talking about that Freddie Freeman stuff from yesterday. I just wanted to make my 2 cents clear. I reported that. That's what Buster Olney reported. That's his words. I don't believe that to be true. I still think there is a greater than 50% chance that Freddie Freeman returns. Is it less than it was to start the offseason? Without a doubt. I mean, it's definitely gone down. As long as this process drags out, it's going to keep going down. I mean, if we're 2 weeks after the lockout and Freddie Freeman's still unsigned, I'll be down to like 20, 30%. But right now I'm still over 50%. Things have gone stagnant. There's been a lockout. Like, that's what's happening. So I think there's a lot of fishiness to that report. Oh, the lockout's about to come to an end, and now Freddie Freeman is reportedly not going to re-sign with his team, and he needs that 6th year. That sounds a lot like maybe some agent spillage, just kind of some spin out there. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, when you say it, I'd agree. A lot of people will bring up the fact that, there's not much negotiations going on because of the lockout. And we said it in yesterday's episode that, there's plenty of backroom deals going on. Obviously, somebody as big as Freddie probably isn't, in the limelight in terms of backroom deals, I would say. But when you say something like that, I guess I tend to agree with you just because your Brave stuff. But even outside of that, and I'm trying to be unbiased, I'm dripping with objectivity. I agree with you. but I think it's less than 50%. Though I will agree. It does look like Freddie's agent or somebody. It could be somebody from the Dodgers. Representation or Yankees representation. Putting this out there.
It could be someone from a rival executive. It could be someone from the Phillies just trying to fuck with you. Like, just to be a rival. Like, that's some shit I would do if I was the GM of the Phillies. I'd be putting random shit out left and right. I kind of just think the timing of the report is super fishy because, we could have a deal done in a couple days. I think a lot of people think Friday could be a great day to get the deal done before that February 28th deadline and before the weekend. But I think in the next week, I'm obviously an optimist here. The lockout is going to come to an end. I think some big strides will be made in the next couple of days, so we'll probably get to talk about that. But, yeah, I think I went into my spaces yesterday, and if you follow us on Twitter, you should definitely join us on our spaces. We're trying to host, at least, especially when Brave season kicks off. We'll be doing them a couple times a week, I'm sure. But I went into my space yesterday, and I was probably 50-50, maybe 60-40 on him coming back. But I came out back to like 80-20 because I was just listening to a lot of people talk about it, and I'm just like, dude, this makes no sense. Like, Freddie Freeman, we're going to let him go over 1 year. After winning a World Series, after all the money we saved on Acuna and Albies, like, we're really going to let him go over 1 year with the DH coming to the National League. So he doesn't have to play first base every day. We're going to let him go over his age 38 year. That to me just sounds absolutely preposterous. Like, either Freddie doesn't want to come back, which is a possibility. Maybe some strained relationships happened and he just wants to go to Los Angeles and he takes the same deal to go to Los Angeles. And I said in the spaces, if that happens, it's a big middle finger to Freddie Freeman. There's going to be no hoorah, we won a World Series with you. Like, if you take the same year to go to our arch rivals in Los Angeles, the biggest competition, I don't care if you're from there, and it's your decision. I'm not going to hate you as a person, but as a fan to player, it's an F you. You're like an ex-girlfriend now. Like, I have no, and this isn't a lovey-dovey relationship anymore. If you're an ex-girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he takes the same deal to go to Los Angeles, which we'll know, because Alex Anthopoulos is very transparent. When all this comes out, it's all tight to the vest. But when all of it comes out, like when he signs, we'll know exactly how those negotiations went. We'll know if he got the same deal from the Braves. And if he did get the same deal from the Braves and goes somewhere else, there's no lovey-dovey anymore. And his whole, legacy in Atlanta will be tarnished, without a doubt. So I think there's a difference there. So it's just crazy to me. Like, I think he's probably going to get the same deal from the Braves that he is going to get from anybody else, because I just can't imagine the Braves being sticklers over 1 year. Now, if someone goes and gives them 7-8 years, fuck it, we're probably going to lose them. I don't think that's going to happen, and there's just no way, with all the money the Braves just made, with all the monies they saved in previous deals, they let the face of their franchise walk to, especially to a rival like the Dodgers. There's just no absolute way. That makes no sense. So that's why this whole report is just so fishy to me.
Yeah, I mean, Chipper said it a few days ago that if Freddie wants to be in Atlanta, he's going to be in Atlanta. I don't think 1 year. I mean, if you go outside the scope of sports or even just the scope of baseball, 1 year in contract negotiations is nothing. You go to any other sport and they'll find a wiggle room, whether it be, they could do player options, team options. There's plenty of wiggle room in terms of getting that extra year on the contract. And I tend to agree with you that, the Braves aren't just going to let Freddie walk over 1 year, especially when it's, a fifth to a 6 year. It could be one thing if those reports aren't necessarily true and it's like a sixth to a seventh or, just like you said, a seventh or eighth year, that could be plausible. But I tend to agree with you that it would be really shocking if Freddie signed elsewhere for that 6 year for two reasons: that either the Braves wouldn't be willing to offer that 6 year, or they did and he chose elsewhere, which would, I don't agree with you so much in terms of, it would be fuck you, Freddie, but that would be a knee-jerk reaction for a lot of fans, and you're a diehard Braves fan, and it would hurt you. But let me just say this, in 10 years when he's retired, and unless, the Dodgers beat the Braves in the NLCS or something like that with Freddie, it won't really matter.
Yeah, see, I don't agree with that. I think, and I've been on here talking to you that it's always would be like there would be no hate towards Freddie if the Braves didn't get a deal done with them. But that was what I'm thinking. Someone offered him more money. If someone offered him more money and he wanted to chase the money, that's one thing. He did his job in Atlanta, and he'll always have a sense of respect. Like, it's not going to be like a total hatred thing. But if you leave in the middle of the Braves championship window a chance where they can win 10 to 12 straight division titles and multiple World Series titles to an arch rival to compete against us on the biggest stage, it's going to be fuck you, Freddie. There is no doubt in my mind about that. And his legacy will be tarnished in Atlanta forever. There's no, I don't think that's knee jerk at all. I don't think that's knee jerk at all, especially if he takes he has the exact same opportunity to go to LA or stay in Atlanta, and he goes to LA, especially LA. Like, if he goes to New York, I think there'll be some different things. If he goes to Toronto, if he goes to Detroit, it'll be kind of like, yo, what the hell? Like, you left us for Detroit? Like what? Or you left us for Toronto? Like, what? Like, really? But LA, no way. There's no way he's remembered in Braves country at nearly as fondly. Like, he'll still have those moments. When you look back in 15 years, it'll be like, oh yeah, like, great job, Freddie. But I don't even know, like, I'm trying to think of someone in sports that is almost KD-ish. That is almost.
I said this yesterday that it's similar to the KD.
I think there's going to be a lot of animosity. I mean, the only difference is, like, he got the job done in Atlanta before he left, and they blew a 3-1 lead. So there's a little more hate there, but it's still, I mean, flags fly forever. But I say this all the time. I've realized after 25 years of not winning a championships and then winning a couple over the last couple years is I don't really give that much of a shit about winning. I just hate losing. So if this guy comes over and starts beating my ass for the next 10 years, and I think that's how a lot of fans are, it starts beating my ass because I'm already looking forward to, like, I don't care that the Braves won the World Series. Like, it's nice to say, hey, we finally won one. We're not the laughing stock. Thank God we're not the laughing stock and haven't, like, blown 87 leads in a row. But I'm past that. Like, I want to win another one. And if he goes and takes more money, and I think most fans that are, like, truly fans feel this way, like, we're ready to win another one. There's going to be a lot of animosity there. That's not going to be a friendly homecoming coming over in Dodger blue if he takes the same contract. I don't think it's going to be a friendly homecoming if he goes to Dodger blue if he takes any contract. But if he takes the same contract, I think, I mean, you're really, really, I mean, he talks about this whole legacy thing. That's out the window. That's out the window if you take the same contract and go to Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's a great pivot point, though, to maybe the Hawks snagging their superstar. We've heard a lot about Zion being unhappy in New Orleans, and obviously that's the golden egg right there, is whatever team could potentially
Yeah,
pry Zion out of New
I don't.
Orleans.
Is that the golden egg?
I mean,
'Cause
for Trae Young, yeah. I mean, name a more perfect guy to play with.
to me, I don't really see Zion at like he's obviously better than John Collins. How much better? And then the way his injury issues, I don't know if the value is that much better than Zion Williamson at this point. Now, if Zion goes out there and averages 25 and 12 next year and plays a full season, that conversation changes. But currently, do you want Zion on your team? Listen, he's basically ghosted the Pelicans. He's ghosted his teammates since being injured. He's played what, 30 games in 2 years? Like he's super overweight. I don't know if I want that on my team. Now, it sounds great to have the Zion that was at Duke, that was in shape and was flying around like a unicorn out there. I just don't know if that exists anymore. And I don't know if it will ever exist like we all thought it was going to. I definitely could be wrong. I'm definitely not closing the door on his career. But I mean, you look at these foot injuries for a guy that big, a guy that's over 300 pounds. That is not a good thing. You look. I hate to bring up this name, but a guy named Greg Odom, like you ever heard of him? The guy was supposed to be a superstar, and his was just chronic injuries. But these injuries to guys who weigh that much and are that big and are these physical specimens, they can derail your career. Now, I hope that doesn't happen with Zion. But if you're talking about golden eggs, these disgruntled superstars that could be coming out, I think the answer is clear as day. It's Donovan Mitchell. Now, will they ever trade Donovan Mitchell? I find that hard to believe. But when you see these reports where it's like, NBA GMs are waiting for the next disgruntled star, and they're talking Donovan Mitchell, they're talking Lillard, they're talking Zion Williamson, I'm just looking at Donovan Mitchell and saying, if you could pair him with Trae Young, that is multiple NBA championships right there.
Yeah, I just love the dysfunction in Utah because there's not many players in the NBA I dislike as much as Rudy Gobert. Giving
And
a
I think
guy a
you and Donovan Mitchell alike.
yeah, that's the huge thing is like Utah's like, we're going to give this he's one of the best defenders in the league. There's no arguing that. But to give that guy a max contract when he's averaging 14 points is just absurd to me. I'm not giving anybody a max contract that can't go out there and get their own bucket or, is at least averaging 25 points a game. I mean, Rudy Gobert is useless on the offensive end. And even then still, when he goes up against somebody, I know Joel Embiid's the best center in basketball, but you're the best defensive center in basketball. You should be able to at least slow down the best offensive center. And Joel Embiid eats Rudy Gobert, eats him, dude. And he's just annoying. He's just annoying.
This is my whole thing about defense in the NBA is it's the most overrated aspect in the whole sport. It's like, guys, great offense dominates great defense at all. You can't stop Joel Embiid in the post. You can't. There's nobody on this planet that can stop him from one-on-one in the post in a whole game from getting 30 to 40 points if you don't double him. There's nobody on the planet. I don't care. Rudy Gobert, Clint Capella is a great defender. He makes Clint Capella look like a little kid begging for candy, asking for his autograph when they're out there. And Capella is one of the best defenders in the league. There is no stopping great offense in the NBA. This is why I hate when people are like, oh, Trae Young doesn't play defense. I don't give a shit. Trae Young drops 40. Trae Young drops 40 and distributes 10 assists on a nightly basis, all the time. That's what I want on my team. And that's another reason why before this I was saying, hey, bro, give me a Damian Lillard in Atlanta. I know it doesn't make sense. Yeah, Trae Young and Damian Lillard. We don't need stops. We don't need stops when both of those guys are dropping a total of 100 points in a 7-game series. So I think defense to me, the conversations and the guys that have these conversations are just straight casuals. Now, team defense is important, and you see the great team defenses in the NBA have success in the playoffs. You looked at Philly last year. They were, I know the Hawks won, but they were tough as nails to get buckets on when, with their length and stuff like that. That plays a difference. But individual defense is the most overrated aspect of the NBA. It's basically useless.
Boston's got incredible defense now. The best perimeter defenders in the league, and they're going to get a first round bounce. That's what you really want is you want to load up on defense and then get bounced in the first round. I don't understand this. It's just mind-numbing that you would give Rudy Gobert a max contract. You were basically just saying Donovan Mitchell,
Well, it's the problem when you're in markets like Utah, you're in Atlanta, giving these guys big contracts because you can't get great free agents to come in. So you want to keep the guys that you have, and you get forced into giving people max contracts. Someone would have handed Gobert a max contract. It wouldn't have been the full 5-year max that he can get from his hometown team, but someone would have done it. So they're like, I don't want to let this guy go. We're almost pressured to just give him the full max. And that's the problem when you're in Atlanta and Utah. And we've seen Atlanta make those mistakes in the past, but they haven't made them this year. Think back to Joe Johnson. It's the same thing. The guy obviously didn't deserve a max. He just wasn't as good. He was an all-star, but come on, the guy shouldn't be getting paid, the second most in the league. So that's the problem with markets like Utah and Atlanta. And listen, you look at that Gobert contract and it's like it's pretty immovable. Like no one's going to try to trade for that. Unless I can't even think of a team that's like a center away like that from a championship. Like they're that close. But there might be one out there that they could move it to, but they're certainly not getting much back in return. That's why the conversation is, Donovan Mitchell, because if he does start causing a havoc, and people have said in Utah, things are much worse than they appear on the surface in that locker room. So if Donovan Mitchell does go in there and request a trade, obviously they can get a king's ransom for him. So it might be why so if you're thinking, why the hell would they move Mitchell and not Gobert? That's why, because he's movable. He can get you a ton of pieces and you can start thinking about a rebuild rather than, rather than trying to move Gobert and maybe give a first round pick just to get his contract out of there. So
yeah, basically moving Gobert, you would have to just be it would just be obviously
salary
trying to, it's trying to just clear salary. I would imagine Utah would have to maybe give up a first round pick or something.
That's what I was
Nobody
saying.
wants Rudy.
And then plus they'd have to take on a lot of salary because no one just has fucking $50 million open cap space to take on. So what kind of salary they're going to be taking on bad contracts.
Right.
It wouldn't be a good trade for them. So that's why the Donovan Mitchell thing makes more sense. And hey, listen, I do think that's something that could happen this offseason. We've seen the Jazz do great in the regular season, but they're not a great postseason team. Donovan Mitchell clearly can't do it by himself. I don't expect that to change this postseason. And this could be the offseason where he does go in and ask for a trade, or at least ask for them to shuffle things around, or I'm out. And I think you could see that from Mitchell. I think Lillard, and I think we're already seeing it from Zion. I know no one said it publicly, but it definitely could happen. So that's why when you think about back to this trade deadline, the Hawks didn't give up what it would take to get CJ McCollum, what it would take to give up Ben Simmons, or all these guys that aren't necessarily superstars, because they might be out on the market this offseason, and there's nobody in better position than the Hawks to make a trade for one of these guys. I mean, they have all the pieces in the world that a team would want. They have all the picks, all the pieces, and pretty much if you're talking Donovan Mitchell, everybody on the table except Trae Young. Start taking your picks.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the Hawks being in a great position. They're Travis Link is well-positioned the team to pretty much just strike at a moment's notice for the next disgruntled superstar.
Yeah.
And if the Jazz get bounced in the first round, I mean, Quinn Snyder could be fired. It could get ugly real fast. I know the reports suggest, it's uglier behind the scenes than it appears. And I believe that. By just, body language, facial expressions, Donovan Mitchell is clearly not happy in Utah. Well, that's maybe something he could deal with. I don't know. But yeah, just like you said, the Hawks are in a perfect position to strike, whether that be for, Donovan Mitchell, Dame, Zion. It doesn't matter who it is. They have the draft capital and the player assets to pretty much make any trade happen.
Yeah. I mean, they could make any trade they want to happen without a doubt. And that's kind of why you saw people freaking out. I saw a lot of Hawks writers, guys that I respect, kind of freaking out like, yo, what's the direction of the Hawks? And I'm thinking I feel like the plan has always been the same. Develop these young assets as much as you can, see how far you can take them, and then deal the ones that you think, that are good enough to be dealt in trades and build around Trae Young and whoever else, whoever turns out to be that second guy, whether it's John Collins or DeAndre Hunter or whatever, then you deal the rest of the pieces to get that third guy or whatever. So I've always thought that was the plan. I've always thought they have kept this financial flexibility, collected assets to make a big trade. I always thought that was the plan. And people got pissed that we didn't make the big trade for Ben Simmons. I'm like, maybe we just didn't think Ben Simmons was worth like going all in for. Maybe we didn't think CJ McCollum was worth giving up assets for, because those assets could, even though they're not as much as a Ben Simmons trade, could prevent us from making the next big trade for Donovan Mitchell, or any of these guys. They weren't worth that. So I've always thought the plan was keep developing talent, make the big move when it becomes available, don't try to force it. And anything that this trade deadline would have been a huge force. So I was kind of surprised why people were upset, because it's like, I get it. You want to win now. Everyone wants to win now. But the quickest way to get back into a rebuild is make that one shitty trade in the NBA. Get that one albatross across your neck. I mean, look at Gobert. I mean, now, like, the Jazz are one of the best teams in the West, but they have that albatross over their neck where they can't really make another move to get another piece. They can't really deal a Gobert. And now they're talking about dealing Donovan Mitchell, who you would have thought was going to be in Utah for 20 years, So that's the issue here. So I think the Hawks did the right move. I mean, listen, Schlenk knows what he's doing. As much as people don't want to admit that the GM's smarter than them at times, like, the guy's proven to be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is the assets the Hawks haven't come to realization yet. The guys who are really just peaking in terms of, DeAndre Hunter still needs to work on his ball handling. Kevin Huerter has things he needs to work on. Onyeka Okongwu is just scratching the surface. I mean, all of these young guys are going to, either grow into a role with the team or grow into a bigger trade asset. So to kind of sell on them low was never going to be smart, in my opinion. And, that could backfire. There's always a risk involved with it. If, these guys don't pan out, then, you should have traded them when their value was highest. But I don't think any of their value is as high as it's going to be. That's for sure.
I 100% agree. I do want to say one last thing. When you talk about there is, a chance it could backfire, a perfect example of that is the Boston Celtics. I mean, the Boston Celtics a few years ago had all these assets to make that huge move, never did. And now they're kind of in a weird limbo. They're playing good right now, but overall they've been a 500 team over the last 2 seasons, really underachieving. They still have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but everything around them is kind of like the Hawks right now, just kind of like, we don't really know what it is. So there is, like, the value could plummet a little bit on some of these guys, but I think overall, that's a smaller chance than the Hawks and some of these guys developing and improving their stock. Because I like you said, I don't think there's any way Kevin Huerter gets any worse. There's no way Collins is getting any worse. DeAndre Hunter, I think, is just scratching the surface. I mean, the guy's played like 50 NBA games. So I think there's so much talent here. They're in perfect position, and good things are going to happen. They're not going to win the NBA championship this year, but if you thought that at the beginning of the season, like, you're probably just a little too much of an optimist. Maybe, tone it down a little. Yeah, but that, you got anything else? Anything else?
Nope.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this episode. We will be back tomorrow. The Hawks finally play. We're back in action against the Bulls, number 1 or 2 seed in the East, so it should be a good one. We'll break that down.